Only 2% of all humans on Earth have green eyes. Not blue, not hazel, not a gray-green that shifts depending on the light. Pure green, the color of forest light filtered through leaves, the color of shallow ocean water over white sand. 2% across 8 billion people. That is approximately 160 million people carrying a color that most of human history never produced at all. Here is the part that should stop you. Green eyes do not actually contain green pigment. There is no green pigment in the human eye. The green color you are seeing when you look at a green-eyed person is not produced by pigment at all. It is produced by light, by the same physics that makes the sky blue and sunsets red. The question is not just how ancient humans developed green eyes. The question is how ancient humans accidentally created a color that their biology was not trying to make. What color are your eyes? Drop it in the comments before we go further. The conventional explanation for eye color is the melanin story. More melanin means darker eyes, less melanin means lighter eyes, brown has more, blue has less, green is somewhere in the middle. This is partly correct, but it leaves out the mechanism that makes green eyes specifically possible, and it is a mechanism that was not discovered until scientists started asking the question the other way around. Not what pigment makes green eyes, but what happens when there is almost no pigment at all. The human iris has two layers. The back layer, the posterior epithelium, is always densely pigmented with dark melanin in every human regardless of eye color. This back layer is what prevents light from entering the eye from the side and causing visual interference. The front layer, the stroma, is where eye color variation lives, and the stroma of a blue or green-eyed person contains almost no melanin. It is nearly transparent, filled primarily with collagen fibers arranged in a specific structure. Here is where physics enters the story. When light enters a stroma with very little melanin, it is scattered by the collagen fibers in a process called Rayleigh scattering, the same process that makes the sky appear blue. Short wavelengths of light, the blue end of the spectrum, scatter more than long wavelengths. In a purely blue eye, this scattered blue light reflects back and produces the blue color. But in a stroma with a small, specific amount of a yellow-brown pigment called lipofuscin layered over the scattering collagen, not enough melanin to produce brown, but enough yellow pigment to filter the blue, the reflected light is shifted from blue toward green. The green is real, the color you see is genuinely green, but it is not produced by green pigment. It is produced by the combination of scattered blue light and a yellow filter. Green eyes are blue eyes wearing a yellow mask, and that mask has an ancient, specific origin. The genetic architecture of green eyes is more complex than any simple single-gene model can capture. Eye color is primarily controlled by variants in a gene cluster on chromosome 15, centered on two genes, OCK-ATWO and HERCETWO. The HERCETWO gene contains a regulatory sequence that controls OCK-ATWO expression. Reduced OCK-ATWO expression means reduced melanin production in the iris stroma. Blue eyes are produced by a single specific mutation in this regulatory region, a mutation that reduces OCK-ATWO expression so severely that almost no stroma melanin is produced at all. This mutation traces to a single individual who lived in Europe approximately 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. Green eyes require a different configuration. They require reduced melanin, but not as dramatically reduced as blue. They require a specific amount of a yellow pigment component. And they require the specific interaction between those two elements that produces the green color through the Rayleigh scattering mechanism. This configuration is genetically more complex and requires a more specific combination of variants than either blue or brown. It is partly this complexity that explains why green eyes are rarer than both. They require multiple specific conditions to be met simultaneously. Ancient DNA studies have produced a specific and striking finding about where these conditions were first consistently met. The highest frequencies of green eyes in modern populations are found in a specific geographic corridor, Ireland and Scotland at the northwest, through northern and eastern Europe, with a notable concentration in the Caucasus Mountains region between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, and extending into Iran and parts of Central Asia. This distribution is not random. It traces the movement and mixing of two specific ancient populations whose genetic interaction produced the green eye combination. The first is the Western hunter-gatherers of Mesolithic Europe, the dark-skinned, light-eyed populations who occupied Europe before agriculture. They carried the genetic variants for reduced melanin. The second is a population from the Caucasus mountain region who carried specific pigmentation modifiers that, combined with the hunter-gatherer reduced melanin variants, produced the specific configuration that generates green. Green eyes are where two ancient populations collided in a mountain range, and a color appeared that neither had produced alone. Green eyes are rare, not rare like blue eyes are rare in sub-Saharan Africa. Blue eyes are rare there because the variants that produce them simply never arrived. Green eyes are rare globally, including in the regions where the underlying genetic variants exist. This is puzzling. If the genetic variants for green eyes were present in the European and Caucasian populations that mixed to produce them, why did the full green configuration not spread more widely? The answer lies in the specific genetic combination required. Unlike blue eyes, which are produced by a single large effect mutation that dominates when present, green eyes require a more precise balance of multiple variants. Too much melanin, brown. Too little melanin with no yellow component, blue. The narrow window in which the specific yellow overscattered blue produces genuine green is genetically precise. This means green eyes do not spread through a population as easily as blue. They require the specific genetic background, the specific combination, to appear. They can disappear across generations when the background shifts. They are in genetic terms an unstable color, more dependent on the specific combination of both parents' contributions than either blue or brown. This instability is also why green eyes change. Not permanently, the underlying genetics do not shift. But green eyes are particularly sensitive to lighting conditions, to the surrounding colors of clothing and environment, and to emotional states that affect pupil dilation. A dilated pupil reduces the proportion of visible stroma, changing the color balance. Green eyes can shift toward gray, blue, or hazel in different conditions in ways that brown or blue eyes typically do not. The unstable, light-sensitive, structurally produced green is the color that is least genetically robust and most environmentally variable. And here is the piece that makes this specific to origin unlocks perspective. The ancient humans who first produced green eyes, the Caucasian populations mixing with European hunter-gatherers somewhere between 8 and 12,000 years ago, were not trying to develop green eyes. They were not selected for green eyes directly. The color appeared as an accidental product of two populations meeting and their pigmentation systems interacting in a specific and unrepeatable way. Green eyes are a genetic accident, one that took ancient human migration to produce, and one that the same migration distributed too thinly across the world to ever become common. If this is making you see your own eyes differently, subscribe. There is a new origin story every week, and the final section of this one connects green eyes to something much older than genetics. Green eyes appear in the oldest literature humanity produced. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest literary works ever discovered, dating to approximately 2100 BC, describes the wild man Enkidu with eyes like lapis lazuli, the deep blue-green stone. The description is not decorative. In the context of the text, Enkidu's unusual eyes mark him as something between the human and the divine, a liminal being whose appearance signals his extraordinary nature. Ancient Greek literature describes specific characters, the goddess Athena most prominently, but also certain heroes as glaucopes, typically translated as gray-eyed or blue-gray-eyed, but referring to a striking, unusual eye color that set these figures apart from ordinary mortals. The word is derived from glaucos, which in ancient usage could describe the blue-green of the sea and the gray-green of olive leaves. These descriptions are consistent with what we know about the distribution of green and light eyes in the ancient Mediterranean and Near Eastern world. Ancient DNA analysis of populations from these regions shows that light eye variants, including those associated with green, were present at frequencies that would have made light-eyed individuals notable but not absent. To a population where brown eyes were overwhelmingly the norm, encountering a person with genuine green eyes would have been a specific, memorable, visually striking experience. The association of unusual eye color with divine or supernatural status in the oldest literature is not coincidental. It reflects a world in which this color was genuinely uncommon enough to seem significant. The Caucasus mountain corridor where green eye genetics most likely first came together is also, in ancient texts, a region associated with the edge of the known world, the mountains beyond which ordinary rules did not apply. The place where Prometheus was chained, where the Amazons lived, where the borders of human geography dissolved into myth. The people who came from those mountains and who carried into Europe and the Near East the genetic variants that produced green eyes were encountered as outsiders, as remarkable, as people whose eyes did not look like everyone else's. The green eyes that appeared in those encounters have been in the human population ever since, still remarkable, still rare, still produced by the same ancient accident of populations meeting in a mountain range that the oldest stories placed at the edge of everything. The Rayleigh scattering mechanism for green eye color is well established in the optics of iris coloration. The specific role of lipofuscin as the yellow filter component is supported by research, but the full biochemistry of why some low melanin irises develop this yellow component and others do not is not completely resolved. The ancient DNA analysis connecting green eye genetics to Western hunter-gatherers and Caucasian populations is based on genomic prediction of pigmentation from variant data, not direct visual examination of ancient individuals. Pigmentation prediction from ancient DNA has known uncertainties. The cultural association between light eyes and supernatural status in ancient literature is a real pattern, but interpreting it as a reflection of population genetics requires inference that the texts themselves do not make explicit. What is well established? Green eyes are produced by Rayleigh scattering modified by a yellow pigment component, not by green pigment. The relevant genetic variants are ancient and geographically clustered. Green eyes are among the rarest eye colors globally. Their distribution follows patterns consistent with ancient population movements from Europe and the Caucasus. So how did ancient humans get green eyes? By accident, by the specific accident of two populations meeting in a mountain range between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea somewhere between 8 and 12,000 years ago. By the specific accident of their pigmentation genetics combining in a way that produced a color neither had produced alone. By the physics of light scattered through almost transparent collagen fibers, filtered through just enough yellow pigment to shift the reflection from blue to green. By the migrations that carried those genetics out of the Caucasus and into Europe and the Near East, where the people who carried them were remarkable enough that the oldest stories remembered them. The green eye is not ancient in the sense of being the original human color. Brown is the original. Every other color, blue, green, hazel, amber, is a departure from that original, produced by specific genetic events in specific populations at specific moments in the human migration story. The green eye is ancient in a different sense. It is a record of a meeting, of a mountain range, of two populations whose descendants are still carrying the evidence of that encounter in their irises. That is what you're seeing when you see green eyes. History written in light. One question. Do you have green eyes or does someone you know? And did you know that there is no green pigment in a green eye, that the color is produced entirely by physics and light? Drop your eye color below. I want to see if green eyes are more common in this comment section than the 2% global average. If this changed how you think about something you see every day, hit like. And subscribe if you want to keep following these origin stories. See you soon.